Sorry? I was going to say. He's off.
It's the holiest room.
All right, let's get started. What we're going to talk about today is place.
Mint.
Mint.
Last time we talked about price.
Ing.
Right. So the marketing mix consists of product, promotion, price, and place. Those are the 4 P's. We refer to that as the marketing mix. So today what we're going to talk about is place. We're going to talk about marketing channels, channels of distribution, if you will. So I want to start our discussion by seeing if you can identify different channels of distribution. After we do that, then we're going to talk about different retailers that are in those channels of distribution. But first I want to identify the different channels of distribution and different types of retailers. Then we're going to look at some examples. Then we'll talk about specific retailers. But first let's talk about the different channels of distribution. What are they? What are some of the different channels of distribution? Wholesale, right? So as part of the value chain, we have processors, we have manufacturers, we have wholesalers and distributors, retailers, and the end user. So when we talk about some of the retailers, for example, what are some of the different types of retailers? What are different types of retailers? We're going to talk about the names of certain retailers, but before we could get to that, let's talk about how we classify those retailers. So, for example, how about mass merchants? Sometimes we refer to that channel of trade as discounters. So mass merchants or discounters, that's an example of a channel of distribution. Department stores is another channel of distribution, another type of retailer. Grocery stores, drugstores, wholesale clubs, specialty stores. Those are all examples of channels of distribution. Those are all different types of retailers. So when we think about how we're going to sell our good, how we're going to sell, whether it's a consumable or a durable good, we have to think about what channel of distribution, what types of retailers are we going to try and sell our goods. And our distribution strategy, if we think about distribution strategy on a continuum, it could be from intensive to exclusive. And somewhere in between would be selective. So when we think about how many different places, how many different channels, how many different retailers we want to sell our goods, that's the way that we would classify the level of intensity as it relates to distribution. So in other words, when we talk about intensive distribution, so our distribution strategy might be intensive. If our distribution strategy is intensive, like it suggests here, then what that means is that our goal is to sell our goods everywhere, so to speak. So at every retailer, in every channel of distribution. Now, it's not enough for us to have that as a goal to say that our distribution strategy is intensive, it's got to be something that's achievable. So if we say that we want to be able to implement a strategy, a distribution strategy that's intensive, it's got to be that those channels of distribution are relevant to our product. So there's got to be a match. There's got to be a logical association. So, for example, what do you think if we said, well, yes, I want to have an intensive distribution strategy, and our company sells sneakers. And you say, yeah, all those that you mentioned, mass merchants, department stores, grocery stores, specialty stores, wholesale clubs, drugstores, convenience stores, I want to sell sneakers in all of those types of retailers, in all of those channels. Do you think that's something that's appropriate, that's realistic? What do you think? Jacob?
So for sneakers, you might not want to put it in like a pharmacy or someplace that's not fitting for your product.
Yeah, so there's a disconnect there, that typically you don't buy sneakers in drugstores or grocery stores.
Right.
Maybe a selective distribution strategy is more appropriate, which would suggest that, yeah, you're right, coach, let's leave those out. So we'll scratch convenience stores, drugstores, and grocery stores from the list, and the others we feel are appropriate for our product. They're relevant to that channel of distribution. So instead of intensive, our distribution strategy would be selective. And the other extreme would be if our strategy was exclusive, which would mean that we're only going to sell our goods at specialty stores, or maybe only at company stores, our company-owned stores. So that's something strategically we need to decide. Is our distribution strategy going to be intensive, selective, or exclusive? So what would be an example of an exclusive distribution strategy that we've seen in the marketplace? What do you think would be a good example? Now sometimes it's not uncommon, in fact it's become more common actually, for companies to give certain channels of distribution what we call a lead launch. So in order to establish a higher perceived value in the marketplace, for example, it's common that manufacturers for a given product will sell the product first in department stores. So they might give them an exclusive for the limited period of time, sometimes 6 months, for example, and then after that period of time is expired, then sell it in specialty stores and then discount stores. But that being said, what are some examples, or let's see if we can have one example of an exclusive distribution arrangement? Go ahead.
The medicines in the pharmacies.
So tell us about that. Explain.
The medicines are exclusive to be sold in pharmacies.
So that for prescription medications, that you can't get it at a department store, but what about, that's actually an interesting example because, for example, discounters very often have a pharmacy within their store, See, they understand that that's going to drive foot traffic to their establishment. And also grocery stores also very often have a pharmacy within their store. So, but that being said, from a manufacturer standpoint, from a pharmaceutical standpoint, you could still argue that, well, it's still we're selling to the pharmacy within that store, and that's a type of exclusive distribution strategy, even though it's basically a store within a store, which has become more and more common. What's driving this store within a store approach to retailing? Why has that become so common? So for example, at Macy's at Herald Square in Manhattan, they have quite a few stores within the store. Why is that? They have Starbucks there. In fact, they have quite a few Starbucks in Macy's. And even, for example, the Ralph Lauren section is really a store within a store. Tommy Hilfiger is a store within a store. The cosmetics counters, for example, are also examples of stores within a store. Why is that? What is it that, from a business strategy, Macy's is trying to achieve?
You have a lot of different stores that are all in the same category, in the same place. You can get more, it makes more sense to have everything all in the same place, rather than to have a separate store here and a separate store there.
Oh, absolutely. So Macy's is a department store, absolutely. That's part of their value proposition. So Kevin is saying that, instead of going to a specialty store, come to Macy's. We've got cosmetics, we've got sneakers, we've got shoes, we've got shirts, pants. So that's absolutely part of the appeal of that channel of distribution. But from a merchandising standpoint and also an inventory standpoint, so what Macy's is trying to do is effectively manage inventory and also the risk associated with operating a coffee shop within their building. So why would you want to do that when an alternative approach is to have these type of concessions, right? So you have a counter, and it's a Lancome counter, for example, or it's the Bobby Brown counter, and so those organizations pay Macy's for that space. So instead of Macy's taking all this inventory in, and then if it doesn't sell, then basically they're stuck with the merchandise, although of course most manufacturers have return policies and so forth, but wouldn't it be better to rent that space to them? So rent a portion of the counter to these different cosmetics companies.
Could it be similar to bartering also?
What was that?
Could it be similar to bartering?
Well, in this case, it's not bartering, but I see the connection you're trying to draw. But that's, in this particular situation, that's not the case. So what they're trying to do is have a way for them to reduce the amount of cash that they tie up in inventory, and also the risk associated with the inventory not selling. And also minimize the amount of employees that they need to hire to run the business. So for example, very often the staff is not employed by Macy's. In some cases, the staff is employed by the the manufacturer or the marketing organization. So for example, when you go to Starbucks there and you get a receipt, what do you think it says? Does it say Macy's or does it say Starbucks?
Starbucks.
Yeah, so in that situation, it says Starbucks. So what about, so Alan raised a good point, this idea of selling exclusively to pharmacies, but we saw it's not as easy as it seems because there's very often pharmacies within different channels of distribution. What about the iPhone? Did Apple have an exclusive distribution arrangement with AT&T? Do you think that's a good example of they could have sold iPhones in mass merchants, right? Mass merchants like Walmart, they sell phones. Specialty stores like Best Buy, they sell phones. Sprint sells phones, Verizon sells phones. But who could tell us more about their distribution strategy? What was the distribution strategy for the iPhone? What did Apple decide? What was their approach?
They only use AT&T as their provider to, if anyone wanted the iPhone, so they had to have the AT&T service so that they could use their phone. And then only after, I think it was like 6 years or something, then they allowed Verizon to also be able to distribute so like people, it's great for AT&T because anyone that wanted the iPhone switched to their network. And
So there's something in it for AT&T,
Right.
absolutely.
Even
There's
though-
definitely a benefit to AT&T for being the exclusive distributor of the iPhone.
right, because even though like Verizon now has their phone, people are so like used to their AT&T service or they're happy with it, they're not complaining, so they're not going to switch back to Verizon. So they just gain like a bunch of customers from that.
And what's the benefit for AT&T? It's a great deal because they have the most innovative new phone, right? The most innovative phone on the market, and if wireless customers want the iPhone, they have to have AT&T wireless service. So it sounds like a great partnership from their perspective. What about, tell us about from the perspective of Apple. Why is it a good thing for them? Why would they not say, we're coming out with the iPhone and we're going to sell it at AT&T, of course, and also at Verizon and Sprint and other places.
If it becomes like exclusive, I think people want it more in general. Like if people can't get it everywhere, that's the like you want something like that. You want an item that most people can't get just anywhere on any street or whatever, and you have to be like consider like an exclusive like member in like a club or whatever to be able to get like an item.
So that creates some appeal.
Yeah,
Right, that-
people talk about it.
And also, Apple gets paid a lot from AT&T. Like, in order to have a deal, AT&T paid a lot to Apple.
So tell us about that. How does that work? What is it that they?
If AT&T wants the iPhone exclusively, they have to pay, I don't know how many millions to Apple. So,
And so there's an advantage if you put the idea on the table of giving an exclusive, then isn't it reasonable that you would expect that because, like Jonathan said, because it's so advantageous to AT&T that they should expect that they would have to pay Apple to have that exclusive arrangement. When you sign a 2-year agreement for AT&T wireless service, you could get an iPhone for $200. How much does the phone actually sell for? What is the, if you're buying if you had to pay $200 for the phone at the AT&T store when you signed the 2-year agreement, what is the actual price of the phone?
$650.
Yeah, it's approximately $600. So, who do you think is paying the difference? Who has the greater incentive?
The carrier.
The carrier, right? Because they don't expect to make money on the phones. In fact, on not just the iPhone, but on every phone. Some of the phones they give you for free. They say, we'll give you a phone. You say, really? I don't get it. Because what they want to sell is the service. They want to sell the wireless service. And if they have to, if you don't have wireless service now, then they'll even give you a phone.
Nothing's free
Right?
tonight.
Right, there's no free lunch. So there's an incentive for them. They're thinking long term. They're saying, we'll give you the phone for free, and you sign a contract with us that we'll provide you the wireless service. What's another, if we have some insight about the industry dynamics, what's the appeal to partnering with AT&T? Yeah, Jason.
If Apple gives AT&T their product, it's another shelf space that they are opportunity to sell their product and make more sales, as opposed to if it's just selling in an Apple store, people have to come to Apple and then get the service, whereas it's direct to serve the product and the service together, or like bundling, I guess,
Co-branding.
or co-branding, yeah.
So tell us more about that. So why AT&T though? Why don't you co-brand then, if that's what you're going to do with Verizon? Why AT&T? What do we know about the market dynamics in wireless communication? Well, first of all, we know that the wireless communication market in the United States is very highly concentrated, which means that there's only a few wireless carrier providers that control literally 90% of the market.
And AT&T is one of the largest.
AT&T is actually the largest. In fact, at the time, they had about 50 million subscribers. So that was one of the, it wasn't that they just randomly picked a provider. They wanted to partner with the largest provider of wireless communication in the United States. And the expectation is that a large percentage of them, this was their hope, would trade up to the iPhone. And, as Jonathan was suggesting, that AT&T, being a very well-established, respected, and prominent wireless communication carrier, would also be able to steal customers from their competitors. So the thought is that if you want the iPhone, the thought is that they would switch from Verizon or Sprint. At $600, you're not going to sell everybody. Remember we talked about the diffusion of innovation model. Everett Rogers, he says that the innovators are about 3% of the market. So they didn't think, even if we said, okay, it's going to be intensive, we're going to sell iPhones everywhere. But I mean, how many people realistically, even in the United States where the per capita income is very high relative to other markets around the world, how many iPhones are you going to sell? Even with a population that's 300 million, which by the way, the US only represents 5% of the world population. So you think 300 million is a lot? That's only 5% of the world's population. In China, there's 1,300,000,000 people. So China is the most populated. India is the second most populated. India also has a bit more than 1 billion people. So realizing that they wouldn't be able to sell the entire market, initially, they thought it was realistic to assume that partnering with and giving an exclusive to the leading wireless service provider was the best thing to do, because they would have access to the 50 million subscribers that AT&T currently had, and that people who didn't have AT&T service, that those innovators or those early adopters who were willing to pay a premium for the phone would also be willing to switch carriers. I mean, it's not crazy to think, oh, you're going to switch from Sprint to Verizon or Verizon to AT&T. Is it? I mean, is that like a unheard of phenomenon? No, it happens. Sometimes if you break the contract, you have to pay a fee. Sometimes it's what, $50 or $150? It depends. But if you really want the iPhone, they thought that that wouldn't be a deterrent. That wouldn't be a reason, because it's not distributed at Verizon. They said, well, we're not really taking that much of a risk. We're not going to sell everybody right away anyway. So we'll give an exclusive to AT&T. It'll be a win-win partnership. We'll certainly have access to their already very significant installed base. We usually refer to that as an installed base. Their existing customers, which we said is about, at that time, was about 50 million. And those who are Sprint and Verizon customers who really want the iPhone, they'll switch. So that's a good example of exclusive distribution. So let's go back now. We identified some of the channels of distribution, some of the types of retailers. Who could tell us what they are? What are some of the types of retailers that we identified so far? And then we'll talk about the names of some of those. But let's go back now and recap. Who could tell us, what are some of the channels of distribution? What are some of the types of retailers that we identified?
Wholesale.
You're sticking with that answer, huh?
Mass merchants.
Again, Isaac, mass merchants. We said also known as discounters. Department stores. Somebody.
Retailers.
Specialty stores. Grocery stores. Drugstores. Wholesale clubs, convenience stores. So now let's see, can we come up with the names of some retailers in those categories?
Costco for wholesalers, wholesale clubs.
Okay, so for wholesale clubs, we have Costco.
Walmart.
What else? What else? Well, let's see. Who are some of the other competitors in wholesale clubs?
Sam's Club.
Sam's Club,
BJ's.
BJ's. So in the United States, those are the 3 key wholesale clubs. BJ's, Costco's, and Sam's Club. What's unique about that channel of distribution? Because remember, we said, now we need to think about if we're going to sell our products at Costco or Sam's Club, whether or not that makes sense. So what is unique about that retail format? Because there's a reason why we classify those channels that way. Obviously, there's some differences amongst them. So what is it about wholesale clubs that makes them unique relative to discount stores and specialty stores and so on?
It's a lot of like business to business for them. No, they're selling to, since they have like mass products, they're selling to other businesses a lot of times.
So sometimes businesses shop there. They because what Jonathan is saying is they sell in bulk. So it's not in a quantity that maybe that the average family would need, but if you have an office, then maybe you buy
3 million staples.
Right, 3 million staples, you might. Exactly. The average person, you wouldn't think would need that many staples. At least not within the course of a decade. But if you have 50 people in your office, then you might. What else? So they do sell in bulk, but is it just business to business, or do they also sell to consumers? They do sell to consumers. Consumers shop there, and they buy in bulk certain items.
Don't they have a membership?
You have to pay a membership, which is about $50 per year. And the thought is that they sell these products in bulk and they're at a discount relative to what you would pay in other channels of distribution. So they sell cashews, for example, but you have to buy it in a big jar, which might be $20. Where maybe in some other channels you buy just a small jar at maybe at a discounter that's maybe only $3. So you have to ask yourself, well, you buy this big jar. I mean, who's gonna eat all that? Maybe if your family really likes cashews, and you're married and you have 8 kids, then maybe it makes sense. Or cereal, for example. So they sell very large boxes of cereal. In fact, there's like 2 bags inside the box.
Family size.
Exactly, it's family size. And they have a whole range of products, but like Jonathan is saying, the key is that it's sold in bulk, large quantities, whatever it is. Like normally you think, oh, you buy a little pack of M&Ms. Yeah, there they sell, like these big bags of M&Ms. Everything you pick up there is, at a minimum, is like $8.98.
You don't need a bag for anything in the store.
Yeah, usually, you don't. You want to get a can of soup. Well, you can't just buy 1 can. You have to buy 6 cans. 6 cans is $7.99. Then that's all 6 cans of chicken noodle soup. And you think, well, but if you have a big family, then maybe that makes sense. Maybe that's what we're sitting here, we think, oh, that sounds like a lot. Maybe that's, will go very quickly in a big household. So certainly bulk is a key part of the way that they stock their store. They sell products in bulk. Not every item is in bulk. So they sell, you could buy a pair of pants there. But usually, like Jonathan is saying, everything is in everything is like supersized quantity. So you buy laundry detergent, it's not one of these like 18-ounce things of laundry detergent. It's a big, like 96-ounce container of laundry detergent. What about mass merchants? Who are some of the key discounters in the United States? So an example of a mass merchant would be Walmart. Walmart is the world's largest retailer. Obviously the largest retailer in the United States. And they're considered to be a discounter, mass merchant, if you will. Kmart is also classified as a mass merchant. Target is also a mass merchant. How is their business model different from Costco, for example? So from wholesale clubs.
There's no membership fee?
There's definitely no membership fee. And the price is equivalent, I would say. Maybe wholesale clubs are less per ounce or per pound, but certainly mass merchants, discounters, have what we call an EDLP approach to retailing, which is everyday low price. Right, so at Walmart, they don't run sales per se. Sometimes they mark things down. Part of their strategy, their retail strategy, is that they focus on rollbacks. So after the product is in the store for a certain period of time, like let's say a year, and they reset the planogram. The planogram is that standardized layout for their stores and for the products, right? What they carry on the shelf. So they standardize what products they carry on the shelf in all their stores as much as possible. But it's everyday low price, and they try to have these rollbacks. So after the product is in the store for a year, then next year they want to sell it for less. So maybe the first year that they have the product in the store, they sell it for $3.97. Next year, they want to be able to sell the product for $3.48. And then the year after that, $3.27. That's known as rollbacks. And so the promise is that they continue to reduce the price paid to the consumer on an ongoing basis. In fact, they talk about, often they caution us to watch for falling prices. You ever see some of their commercials? Watch for falling prices. And that's what the rollbacks are about. That's an important part of their retail strategy. And they expect customers are going to look for rollbacks, price reductions. But that's different from department stores. Department stores are known as high-low retailers. They're not everyday low price. They're high. Their prices are high, and they have sales often, very often. So they have sales very frequently.
TPR.
Yeah, they are a type of a TPR, temporary price reduction, because after the sale is over, right, they say come in, the sale is 50% off, and then that's for, sometimes they have it as a one-day sale. So Jacob is saying, yeah, it's like this, you have this TPR, temporary price reduction, 50% off on Wednesday, and
St. Patty's
then,
Day.
yeah, they have a sale for everything. Columbus Day, President's Day, any excuse for a sale. And so we refer to that as high-low retailers. When do you think they do the most of their volume, the most of their revenue?
Christmas
Holidays.
fourth quarter.
Yeah, certainly for most retailers, the fourth quarter is important, and when they have the sales. So definitely they drive a lot of foot traffic when they advertise that they're having a sale, and they send their promotional material, whether it's a postcard or a catalog, right? They send that to your home, and that drives a lot of traffic to the store, and it generates a significant amount of sales. So some examples of department stores would be what? What would be some examples of department stores?
Macy's,
Macy's.
Sears.
Sears. Wow, that's interesting. Hold that thought.
Then is that not a retail?
It is a well, yeah, it is a retailer.
I mean,
But let me come back to that, because Sears, we would actually describe Sears as a general merchandiser. Now Sears, 30 years ago, was the nation's largest retailer in the United States. But we're gonna come back to that. But we would classify them as a general merchandiser as opposed to a department store.
So would Nordstrom's also fall into that same category? Or
The
Saks?
same category as Sears?
Yeah.
Shh, don't say that.
Or Saks Fifth Avenue?
No.
Oh, no, you did.
Saks Fifth Avenue, Macy's,
I'll see it.
Lord and Taylor, Nordstrom's, Neiman Marcus, Bloomingdale's, those are all
Upper.
department stores. Yeah, those are all examples of department stores, and certainly some department stores sell merchandise at a higher price than others. So Neiman Marcus, Nordstrom's, those are at a higher end. Bloomingdale, Saks, also. But they're
Five town stores.
part of the. We didn't talk about. Well, yeah, we did. We talked about the fact that department stores, besides very often having this high-low pricing strategy, that they have a variety of departments. So they have a lot of different departments, thus their name. Department stores, that classification. Why? Because they have a shoe department. They have a watch department. They have a cosmetics department. They have a bedding department. They have all these departments within the store. So they have something. They have something in a lot of different departments. But that's different from a specialty store. What's the difference between a department store and a specialty store? Because a specialty store might also sell sneakers, and Macy's sells sneakers, but what's the difference? What's the difference between Macy's selling sneakers and a specialty store selling sneakers?
The specialty stores just sell sneakers.
Yes, absolutely. So the specialty stores have a narrow focus. They have a narrow focus, but they have a wide assortment. They have breadth. So sure, you could get sneakers at Macy's, but Macy's, although Macy's is a part of our life, you know, right? You're familiar with Macy's advertising? Macy's, we're a part of your life. You want me to sing this first song? La 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 la. So, at Foot Locker, for example, they have a lot of sneakers. Macy's has quite a few sneakers there too. You could get nice sneakers at Macy's, but at Foot Locker, they have a lot of sneakers, a lot of different kinds of sneakers, a lot of different brands, a lot of different styles. Hundreds, right? If you look at the number of SKUs, the number of stock keeping units, they have a very wide variety. Their assortment is very large.
And it's usually newer now. Foot Locker, they'll have newer sneakers, and like Macy's will have like maybe last year's now.
Well, that's
how I felt.
that's not something that I'm sure Macy's would agree to. As a department store, I'm sure they wouldn't be happy about that. But what happened? It's reality. No, I mean, as marketers, we need to manage these channels. So what we might have done is given Macy's an assortment of sneakers that other retailers don't have. So even if we don't give a retailer an exclusive on a product, we could still, right, on a product line, we could still give them an exclusive on an item. So you might be the only one that has that sneaker in orange. So that's very possible. So of course, what we're trying to do as marketers is differentiate the assortment that's carried at different retailers in different channels. One of the challenges that we face, for example, if we ask Walmart to carry our product, is that Walmart could sell the product at a much lower price than other retailers. So if that's the case, well then how are you going to sell that at Macy's? How could you sell that same product at Best Buy? That's embarrassing to somebody to come in there and say, well, I saw this at Walmart, it's $20 less. That's not funny. That's like really embarrassing that people think, well, you're overcharging them. But what marketers do is work really hard to differentiate the assortment. So to make the item unique. So the item, especially that Walmart has, you want to be a unique SKU. Whatever that means, unique color, unique configuration, unique features, so that other retailers are not going to be embarrassed. Because there's no way that they could sell the product at the same price as Walmart. So if they are going to carry it at Macy's, then it's got to be with more features, more benefits, so that Macy's can say, well, it's not the identical product. Of course, it's right, whatever the product type is. Yes, it is a sneaker, it is a MP3 player, but this particular item has these features that the Walmart product doesn't. That's our responsibility as marketers to make that happen. Because when you go to Best Buy, when you go to whoever the retailer is, they're going to ask, well, what are you giving Walmart? Because they know that Walmart, not because of predatory pricing, but because their cost structure, their operating expenses are so much lower than other retailers that they could buy it literally for the same price, because the government says you have to sell the product for the same price. They could buy it for the same price and still sell it for less. So they require a smaller markup on the product. But if yours has less features, right, your item is unique, then you could charge a different price. Or if it's a different configuration. So for example, let's say that we're going to sell plastic bowls, plastic storage bowls, plastic storage bowl that has a plastic lid. Now, if we sell that to Bed Bath & Beyond, for example, and they want us to put it in a box that's going to hold eight plastic containers, because what we want to be able to ship is case pack and a half. So in other words, what we ship has got to be able to fit on the shelf. So if they require, let's say for the shipper, 8 units with the label on it and the plastic lid snapped on, then we're going to charge them more than if we sell that product to, let's say, we need to mention dollar stores, let's say to Dollar General, where they don't require it to be 8 in a box, but they'll take 50 in a carton, and we don't need to snap the lids on. So then we could charge Dollar General a lower price. Because as far as the government is concerned, right, we should be able to justify that our cost is different. Because now in the manufacturing facility, we don't have to pay somebody. Otherwise, we'd have to have another person on the line that's snapping the lids on the containers. They say, no, it's okay. Just send us 50 bowls and 50 lids. That's the way we're going to sell it. Let the customer, each bowl, grab a lid. So there's got to be differentiation. If there is differentiation, we could also charge a different price. So we talked about mass merchants, department stores. What about grocery stores? The largest grocer in the United States, you're probably thinking, well, tell me some of the names of grocery stores that you're familiar with. Who could raise your hand, tell me if you know. Go ahead, Jacob.
Fairway.
Fairway.
Walgreens, ShopRite.
ShopRite.
Kroger.
Kroger.
Wegmans.
Wegmans. Wegmans is nice.
Pathmark.
Yeah, Wegmans is a nice store. Publix, you could go in there, you'd probably think, oh, apples. You go into Wegmans, they have like 30 different kinds of apples. Who ever heard of such a thing, right? What, Giant?
Pomegranate.
Oh, it used to be Ucroft.
Pomegranate? Who said pomegranate?
Brooklyn.
You know where pomegranate is? On Coney Island Avenue?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Valley Parking.
Pathmark.
That's right.
Kroger.
Yes, Kroger.
Pathmark.
What about Pathmark, Albertsons,
Whole Foods.
Whole Foods? All of those are examples of grocery stores. None of them are the largest grocers in the United States. The largest grocer, not the traditional grocery store, not the largest traditional grocery store, the largest grocer is Walmart. Walmart sells more groceries, even though obviously they're not a grocery store, because they're a mass merchant, they sell more groceries than any other retailer, any other grocery store in the United States. So Kroger is the largest traditional grocer. Kroger is the largest traditional grocer in the United States. The largest traditional grocery store, I should say. Walmart is the largest grocer. What is it about grocery stores that's unique?
Just find groceries.
Well, one of the things that does make them unique is the assortment that they carry. So their focus is on food, but they also have implemented what we call a scramble merchandising strategy, which means that they carry a variety of diverse products besides groceries. So you could even go into some of these grocery stores and buy a light bulb, a mop. Well, those are not groceries, but they sell them. What about drugstores? Walgreens, Rite Aid, CVS, Dwayne Reed. Yep, absolutely. Those are all very well-known drugstores. And Walmart and CVS are certainly the largest. They each, in terms of the number of locations, have increased very significantly in the last several years. On a national basis, Dwayne Reed, certainly in a regional basis, we see like they're in Manhattan, they're like practically on every corner. Is that not so? And so they also have a scramble merchandising strategy, which, believe it or not, 25 years ago, that was not so common. They have, you could get laundry detergent, right? Shoelaces, just about anything in the drugstores. Depending on the drugstore, some are larger than others. One of the things that, in fact, you might even almost say that drugstores, convenience stores, dollar stores, specialty stores have a rather small format, if you will, compared to discount stores. So like Walmart, their supercenters are about 200,000 square feet, which, to put it into perspective, is huge. So 200,000 square feet is a big store. That's enormous. Some drugstores, for example, and well, certainly convenience stores, you're talking about maybe 2,000 feet. Some convenience stores absolutely are only 2,000 square feet compared to 200,000 square feet. Drugstores have actually increased in size quite a bit over the years, as we've seen, as they broaden their assortment very substantially. So they're definitely not as small as convenience stores, but they're certainly not as big as mass merchants, as discount stores like Walmart or Kmart. Some of the, not all of the Target stores or the Kmart stores. Kmart refers to their superstores as Big K. They're not all 200,000 square feet. Some of them are a bit smaller, but still very significant. Very often, most of them are still around 150,000 square feet, which is very large. Specialty stores are also a fairly small format. In fact, even, for example, a Foot Locker, not really much bigger than this room, would you say? I mean, they just have like wall-to-wall sneakers. I mean, how many, it's probably bigger than your bedroom, but how big do you think those stores are? I mean, what do you think the dimensions are?
Question, is Home Depot a specialty store?
Ah, Home Depot. So how would we classify Home Depot and Lowe's? What is a?
Well, they used to be specialty, but now they sell patio furniture and like it's a general home store. So they've expanded from home improvements, many things.
Yeah, and so, but you don't think that like so you're thinking more of like the construction aspect versus the fact that they sell furniture is less of furnishings, is what you're saying, right? So they sell the furniture, the patio furniture, which is different from saying you're selling the bricks to put on the patio. Now they not only sell the bricks to put on the patio, they also sell the furniture, which is, you're saying is like not construction.
They also sell appliances.
Yeah, they sell like ovens and stuff. Watch.
So
So
it's still home furniture, but it's
Right, so we could describe them as a general merchandiser, or generally they're still very often referred to as home improvement centers. Home Depot has been very successful. In fact, to your point, they at some locations they even sell gas. So you could, that's right, Walmart too.
Sam's Club sells gas.
Yeah, so
Coach, is there a reason why Sam's Club, their gas, you don't have to be a member for?
I'm not sure. I guess because they don't want that to be a barrier to customers. They figure, well, if you, they feel they might lose customers because of that.
I mean, doesn't that go against their whole model?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not familiar with, I never bought gas there.
They're the cheapest.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Yeah, I'm not sure what, I mean, I understand why they would do that, but you're right, it does go against their business model. But do you think it's a good idea?
No, I think it's terrible.
You think that they should only be for their members?
I see what
The
it's
membership has its privileges, that if you want to get the gas at a
I think
discount.
it takes off the members.
But they think about it, they can get more people.
People spend, an annual fee to be a member.
It's like, but they use it like
Sam's
someone
Club.
can use it like a gas station, like let's say someone's low on gas. Like just stop in Sam's Club, a random person. That happens all the time to people.
And so what happens when you go in there to pay? What do you think? Do you think they try to sell you a membership?
When you go where?
when you go to get gas at Sam's Club.
They haven't tried to sell me, man.
They haven't said you've been there, and you go in there, and you're not a member.
Not
They don't ask you for your card. They don't even ask you for your card, so it's like they don't.
Yeah.
And it's
I think someone said it may be like a legality issue that according to like I don't know standards you're not allowed to I guess not sell gas to certain people.
oh maybe that's
But
interesting.
Walmart does. No?
Hmm.
Actually, I don't know that.
Yeah, you know.
What yeah, that may be the case. I'm not aware of that, but there might be some state or city regulation regarding that. I wonder, and it says Sam's Club, but when at the gas pump, it's like Sam's.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Do you think that? So, what do you think about the idea that they charge a membership fee? You know, and it's like it's not a little bit of money either. It's like $50, all based on the premise that what you buy here is going to be less, significantly less. When you shop here, your annual savings is going to be hundreds of dollars, and we just ask that, you know, in order to enable us to be able to do this, that that you provide, that you pay a fee. You pay $50 a year to be a member. Because that's another example of exclusivity, a type of exclusivity where your customers are exclusive. And you might argue, well, what about if they didn't charge a $50 fee? Maybe they would have more customers. Maybe that would be better. But at this point, their strategy has not wavered. All right, so we talked about the different types of channels. We talked about the different retailers in those channels. Let's see if we could, you want to see if we could get through this? Just try and get through this. See if we have another, we have what, another hour? Let's see if we could get through this. Where's H? Let's see what we could get done. All right, so here we go. It says, 2 students, Nick and Lee, were studying for an upcoming exam in their Introduction to Marketing course.
I don't have that sheet.
While studying, because you came 20 minutes late, right?
Yeah, right. That's true.
While studying the chapter on marketing channels
No, you didn't.
and wholesalers, Nick made the following statement. This one too. The following statement. If it weren't for wholesalers and other intermediaries in the channel of distribution, the products we buy would cost a lot less. What do you think about this? This is interesting. We talked about this when we talked about company-owned stores, selling through company-owned stores versus third-party distribution. So it says, if it weren't for wholesalers and other intermediaries in the channel of distribution, the products we buy would cost a lot less. After contemplating Nick's statement, Lee said, wait a minute. Yeah. In between Barry's mumbling and murmuring, we learned in class that channel intermediaries actually make marketing more efficient by minimizing the number of transactions necessary to sell products. Lee's statement refers to what? The fact that A, value is created by channel intermediaries. So what he was saying is really just dismissing the value that that intermediary in the value chain was providing. All intermediaries provide a certain function. Like, for example, what is the function, what is one of the key functions of a distributor, for example, or a wholesaler? one of the main functions is that they break case packs. So if you order directly from the manufacturer, if your business is large enough that you could order directly from the manufacturer, well, they sell also in like what we would consider to be bulk. If you buy from a wholesaler, you say, well, send me 3. Well, they have a case that has 20 in them. So what they do is they send 3 to Isaac's shop, they send 3 to Jacob's shop, they send 3 to Noah's shop, and Verbitsky, they send 10.
Yes.
Don't ask me why, but they do. So that's an important function. Now, of course, as a wholesaler, as a distributor, of course, you make a certain amount of margin. And remember when we talked about vertical integration, we said, why would a company like Kenneth Cole, for example, a designer, why would Kenneth Cole have 400 company-owned stores that sells their product and also sell in Macy's? Well, because they understand that Macy's is an intermediary. As the retailer, Macy's is an intermediary. Macy's is earning margin, and they're entitled to earn margin. But if you have your own company-owned store, then Kenneth Cole is earning the margin of the retailer and also the manufacturer as the designer. So it makes sense for them to want to vertically integrate. That's why companies vertically integrate. They want to be more profitable, more efficient. So in that case, they're not only manufacturing the shoes, the clothing, but they're also selling them. Horizontal integration would be if you're a specialty store. Let's say your organization is a specialty store, you sell sneakers. But if you also open up a specialty store that sells kitchenware, and then you open up a specialty store that sells clothing, and you open up a specialty store that sells electronics, that's an example of horizontal integration. Because why? Your business is retailing. If you're expanding that way, then you're opening up all these different types of retail shops, these different types of specialty stores. We call that horizontal integration. Vertical integration means that we're not only the retailer, but we're the manufacturer, maybe the processor, etc. All right, so we'll continue next time. Good job. You guys rock. Yes. Orange juice.
Yeah.
Next day.
Six.